We need to unite, but they have always been there to divide us, to be able to reign on us through slavery. Our ancestors experienced it, and until today, we have it fed up in our flesh, but it continues. Our great people were deported, tortured, and again when they had their war, we supported them, but they paid.
Our young men and women are running away, and remember the Germans are now saying we want young people. The Canadians are saying we want young people. We are in danger. You who have been trained in this institution, now go back to your countries and tell your countries that yes, there is a conspiracy against the continent of Africa, but the human relationship, is it not about conspiracy? Even in families, are there not conspiracies? Because we are divided. We have 55 telephone access codes. Nigeria 234, Ghana 233, Kenya 254, Tanzania 255, Uganda 256, Zambia 260, Zimbabwe 263. How can we, in this day and age, you cross into Benin, you cross into Togo, you cross into Guinea-Bissau, you have a different internet connectivity. Why can't Africa have a single satellite?
Monkey money.
Ils nous ont payé en monnaie de singe. D'autres ont été tués lorsqu'ils ont essayé de revendiquer.
Others were killed when they tried to stake their claim. Several of them died in their village as a result of the war. Never recognized the work of the African. Our mission is first of all to awaken Africa and do better, so that you from the diaspora can make people understand what Africa is. When I see you, united in this association, I feel even more proud because that's all we are asking for today. Our fight is to be able to unite, because united we are strong, divide we are weak. They have always worked to divide us, so I urge you to spread the message so that Africa can unite it. We have been lucky or unlucky enough to live through war for several years, and at some point, we had to say enough is enough, that we are fed up. We have taken our responsibilities and we realize today more than ever that we were right to take our responsibilities. Because these armies that were installed here were never able at any time to monitor our territory, to see the terrorists who came to kill us and leave with all the means they had when we asked them to leave. Today, we were able to acquire an array of means that allow us to wage our war and ward off the threat, and contain it. I would say, we were able to equip our forces and replenish our army.
They can only serve their master. And these people, each time they try to manipulate you, you must advise each other. Because each situation can be exploited by these enemies of the nation to try to discourage you, to demotivate you. So you must advise each other and do not pay attention to certain words, even on certain media. Everyone is not obliged to be a patriot. You are the first patriots. You have decided to defend the country. There is nothing better than that. Those who want to support you, let them support you. Those who want to discourage you through writing, you must close your ears and move forward.
Alors, il faut qu'on se rappelle quelque chose.
We must remember something. Recently, there was a so-called NGO. It is not even a NGO because a NGO is a non-governmental organization. But they are not non-governmental because they are financed by a federal budget, by a state. This so-called NGO produces reports to say that the FDS and the VDP are carrying out executions. They came in and left here. It is to stain your morale. It is to scare you, to prevent you from being able to fight. No. Besides, we will take this NGO into account. Because people must understand something.
Il faut que les gens comprennent quelque chose. Ce qui nous arrive ici,
what is happening to us here? It is true that they have manipulated a part of our population in the Sahel, but they did not have this armament. What led to this important armament? It is Libya. Who destroyed Libya? It is this NGO, the same NGO that made these false reports and gave to whoever wanted to create a rebellion for people to intervene and make Gaddafi fall. And the powder is spilled in the Sahel. These millions of lives that were taken in the Sahel, we must take into account this NGO, because it is responsible for these false reports that it made to consolidate this thesis of attacking Libya. They have no moral lessons to give us. Look at the world. Let them defend human rights everywhere in the world before coming here. We have the chance to have similar situations in this world. You are engaged voluntarily. There are countries where we take force, we kill. You leave or you die. Others, even if they want to flee, end up dying. They do not speak of human rights because these people see us as subhumans. They see us as slaves. It's like that in their heads. They have never changed their logic, but it is up to us to show them that we are not slaves, and we will never accept this state of affairs. So there is no need to let yourself be overwhelmed by the story they tell, whoever wants to hear it. You have to stay focused on your fight. Stay focused. We know what we are doing. And even now, the commander of BVDP told me that there is a training session on human rights for the benefit of group leaders and their subordinates, which is ongoing. If we make an effort, we know that it is for us. We do not do anything to please anyone. We do it for our country. And you are committed to that. Defend your country. Do not listen to these individuals. They should not affect your morale. In the history of the world, there have been wars. And during the Second World War, people organized themselves to defend themselves, a little bit everywhere. But there was a country that could not defend itself, that had to come and take our ancestors to go and defend them.
Et aujourd'hui, ce même pays veut nous donner des leçons.
And today, this same country wants to teach us the hospital that laughs at charity.
No. Vous êtes les descendants
No,
de ces mêmes
you are the descendants of these same ancestors who went to defend the others, who freed the world from Nazism.
Aujourd'hui, vous vous battez pour vos terres.
Today, you fight for your lands. These same individuals dare to create terms to dirty you. We oppose this. We will never agree.
Continuez à défendre vos terres. Ce sont vos richesses qui intéressent ces gens.
Continue to defend your lands. It is your wealth that interests these people. It is our gold, our minerals that interest them. If not, why come and look for entire villages to take our lands? So we will fight and we will recover our lands. Our wealth belongs to us. It is to us that it will benefit and to our children. So I encourage you to keep in mind that this war is to get us out of slavery. It is for our independence. And you must keep your morale high. Stay up. We will never give in to the manipulators, to these individuals who no longer know this notion of homeland, or to these people who come from the outside to try to tame us through their terms that they invented and their organisms that they invented to serve us. Fight. Move forward. Do everything you can. Dive, as I said, into your cultural resources, into what you have been forging since the village. Dive into it and wage this war. Stay focused and stay up.
Vous êtes ces gens-là qui ont osé.
You are those people who dared to take up arms to support the different forces of defense and security, to fight to recover our lands. This does not apply to everyone. Everyone at his level can do what he can. Others are in business and contribute. Others try to communicate to encourage you. Others try to do what they can. But you have decided to take up arms and face them. We like to say that in times of war, there are two types of citizens. Those who wear uniforms called FDS, who must go towards death. It is their duty. And the civilians who must flee death because they are not trained for it. But in the history of peoples, there is always a moment when you find yourself confronted with your existence. Either you fight or you disappear. Today, Burkina faces its destiny. It is a question of existence. And at this crucial moment, among those civilians who must give water to death, you have decided to take up arms and face and support your brothers in arms. We cannot stop paying tribute to you. We cannot stop magnifying you. We cannot stop glorifying you. You are from Burkina Faso, and that is all we have asked. You have faced the enemy without knowing the enemy. Without having the same capabilities as the security forces. But you have faced it. Many of you have paid for their lives, but you continue to resist. What can we do to improve your working conditions? That is combat. First of all, the FDS has existed for several years. But it was not equipped, especially the notion of individual weapons. I think that this problem is more or less solved. All those who are VDP in the villages today have weapons. Anyway, there are still many who want to join, I am sure. All the villagers might want to be VDP, but we will go step by step. Because we have also asked the civilians to contribute, as I told you earlier, up to a level that should allow you to take charge.
In Nigeria, I do not have internet at an institution that deals with security. You get the point that I'm trying to make? It cannot be right. And I know why we don't have internet connectivity. It is because we are divided. We have 55 telephone access codes. Nigeria 234, Ghana 233, Kenya 254, Tanzania 255, Uganda 256, Zambia 260, Zimbabwe 263. How can we, in this day and age, you cross into Benin, you cross into Togo, you cross into Guinea-Bissau, you have a different internet connectivity. Why can't Africa have a single satellite and a single telephone code so that when I travel from Mogadishu in Somalia to Dhaka in Senegal, like the Chinese do, like the Americans do, like the Indians do, we can have the same, because communication is critical to development. And I'm saying this, part of my agenda is to prick your conscience with live examples, that you may go out there irritated, but irritated to do the right thing. And I'm suggesting that indeed, when we talk about development, this is what we must do. But is Africa conscious of her state? Yes, Africa is conscious. This is what makes me happy. That after all these analysis, it appears to me that Africans have now recognized that going forward, we can only defeat the conspiracies, we can only have development as we are talking about it by working as a team. And that is why, beyond the Millennium Development Goals, beyond the Sustainable Development Goals, we as Africans under the aegis of the African Union do now have our grand vision of Africa Agenda 2063. And that Africa Agenda 2063, let me tell you, if we can fulfill it, many of you here will be upstairs by the year 2063. But our contribution, perhaps you do not know what I mean upstairs, not up. You will be with the Lord himself. But the most important thing is that Africans are now beginning to see beyond the next election. Because part of our problem in Africa has been that we plan in 5-year circles. We don't have a grand agenda, but now we have a grand agenda. And if you look at the 7 pillars of Africa Agenda 2063, everything is covered. Health is covered. Research and science is covered. Climate change is covered. Women's participation is covered. Democracy and governance is covered. The arts and the culture are covered so that Africa can become a serious player in the international agenda. As we speak now, we are not a serious player. You know, and I say this perhaps too often, but I must repeat it because it is important. I was looking at the GDP of Indonesia. The GDP of Indonesia this year, by the end of this year, will be 1.1 trillion United States dollars. Indonesia is the 17th largest economy in the world using all critical indices. It's amongst the G20. The population is about 200 million, just about Nigeria. Nigeria is a GDP give and take at the very best of 550 billion United States dollars. I'm looking at the power generation in Nigeria. At the very best, you generate about 17,000 megawatts. You lose about half of it, so that what goes into the grid is no more than 8,000 to 7,500 megawatts into your GDP. You are the biggest economy in the world. If you look at Iran, Iran generates 75,000 megawatts. So when we talk about industrialization, we are not even close to industrialization. Look at the diversity of power generation that you have. Most of it is hydro. You are not harnessing your solar. The Kainji dams and the other dams with climate change are going to dry. If you look at the major rivers, it means that you are going to be in trouble. You look at Zimbabwe now, for example, in power generation, 2,000 or give it 2,500 megawatts. The dams are drying, the Kariba is drying. So Africa must begin to think, even as we think of Africa Agenda 2063, because energy is the game changer. Without energy, all these generators you see everywhere in Nigeria must disappear for industrialization to come. And in many African countries, including my own country, Kenya, which generates, I think we have about slightly under 3,000 megawatts. You can't. You can't. So we must go to Inga Dam. We must begin to generate. We must go to Egypt at the Aswan High. Egypt is not doing very badly. We must go to Inga, produce 40,000 megawatts. We must go to Ethiopia, the Grand Renaissance Dam, produce 10,000 megawatts. Then we talk of industrialization. And why do I talk about industrialization? There are scientists here. It is only through industrialization that we are going to be manufacturers in all sectors. As it is now, 80% of what we consume in manufactured goods are from China. If China closes shop, we are dead. We are dead. So I'm thinking that Africa Agenda 2063 is a good thing, but we must work at it. I'm thinking that Africa Continental Free Trade Area is a good thing. Launched with the Secretariat in Accra, Ghana, a good thing. But how are we going to trade? How are we going to get somebody to drive a truck from Accra, Ghana to Juba or to Asmara in Eritrea without peace and security? So you can also see that peace and security is at the very heart of it. In the United States of America, and many of you are familiar, you can drive a truck from Florida through to Alberta in Canada, and it is safe. The roads are good, the security is there. I'm saying, therefore, that as we talk about development, we must think about development in a very comprehensive manner. We must ask ourselves how we govern. And I want to conclude my presentation to you by telling you that Africa must be very careful. We must be very careful because of lack of resources in Africa. I'm beginning to hear things that worry me. And because I'm a keen student of what is happening in Africa, I'm getting worried on a daily basis. The forces that divide us, the belief by many people in Africa that if we separated from our current countries, we would be better. It is beginning to happen. It is happening here in Nigeria. It is happening. I saw a letter last week addressed to the president of Zambia by a people in Zambia called Baroseland. And they are telling President Hakainde Hichilema that you remember in 1964 we had an agreement with the Lusaka government that the time has now come for Baroseland to become an independent country. Can you believe it? I hear people in Namibia saying, do you remember that there was a strip called the Caprivi Strip? I hear people in Ghana saying that you remember that in the Volta region we had a different country. I hear people in Zimbabwe saying that there should be a country called Mtuakazi. I hear people in South Africa, the South Africans, saying that we should have a separate country in the Western Cape. I hear people in Ethiopia saying we should have Tigray and Oromo. The centrifugal forces are there. And the only way to bring them in is to create a sense of belongingness. The people must feel that they are part of it. I remember the words of John Garang of South Sudan when he spoke in Khartoum. He told the Numeri government, we do not want to create a separate state, but make unity attractive. Make unity attractive, make Sudan attractive, make Khartoum attractive, because if you don't make it attractive, we will separate, and that will make us weaker. And I'm saying this because of this thing we call democracy. Democracy demands that people have a sense of belonging and that they believe that the country in which they live represents their interests and that deliberate efforts are being made in that regard. So, fellow Africans, I'm one who believes that this continent has a contribution to make. There is not a continent today that has the natural resources that this continent has. Not one. There is not a continent today that has a population as young as ours, which could be a resource. There is not a continent. There is not a continent today that has the resources in different diverse ways which can be harnessed. With a population of 1.4 billion, we are a potential market. But we must also warn ourselves. I am aware that you are talking about climate change. It is only through unity, therefore, that we can fight all these. Our rivers are drying. Lake Chad has shrunk by nearly 1/3. The rivers are drying. The climate is changing. The Sahara is coming down south. The rivers down are drying or getting polluted. Our farms are not yielding the way they were yielding before. Our seeds are being destroyed. Our young men and women are running away. And remember, the Germans are now saying, we want young people. The Canadians are saying, we want young people. We are in danger. You who have been trained in this institution, now go back to your countries and tell your countries that yes, there is a conspiracy against the continent of Africa, but the human relationship, is it not about conspiracy? Even in families, are there not conspiracies? Is it not our duty to fight and defeat those conspiracies so that that is no longer an excuse? Go out there and say that we have the possibilities and that these possibilities require and demand that we look at Africa as a total whole. Go out there in your little ways and make your contribution. The 78 of you who are graduating here today, I'm suggesting to you that development must start with you. Go back and let in every institution where you are, let it be said that since he came back from NISS, he or she is different. He is different in a positive way. And all of us who are here, whether we are politicians or academics and in different sectors, let us go out there having made a solemn vow that Africa must do it. If you can't do it for yourself, ask yourself which Nigeria you want to bequeath to your children and your children's children. You are here, maximum 40 years, you will have gone upstairs. But after 40 years, in which kind of country will you want your children to be? This is the question. It is not about you and me. It is about them. This is intergenerational. Africa must change, Africa can change, and it can only change if we change our minds. And our minds we must change. Ladies and gentlemen,
we really need so much our brothers and sisters back to Africa. We don't need them to continue staying in the West. That is something that I pray every day that a time will come when the diaspora and the people who are in diaspora and maybe Caribbean, those who want to come back to Africa, should come back to Africa. Africa is their home, and Africa is where they're supposed to be. Is their motherland. Okay? That is where they're supposed to live. That's where they're supposed to be. And many a times I normally sit down and pray and tell God to just take care of our brothers and sisters who are in diaspora. God to take care of them and God to protect them. Because they are living in a foreign land and in a land where sometimes people who live there don't see them as equal to them. Sometimes they do whatever they want. We've heard and we've seen issues of people disappearing and others being killed, the genocides, the racism and all those kind of things. Okay? But, something that really makes me even bitter sometimes is when I realize, sometimes I sit down and I realize that Western countries have been built by the black people. Like, black people were taken into slavery from Africa by force. They were taken to ships and they were placed in ships in masses, and they were taken to the foreign lands, to the West, in slavery. And they've been working. They were given a lot of work. They struggled. They were being even beaten up and oppressed to work for these people. They worked so much. So where these countries are today, they've been built by black people. You'd realize that even if you try to make your research, it is only that we don't have, we are being pressed so much so that we cannot be able to bring out these issues. But when you just sit down and think and do your analysis and statistics very well, you realize that Africans are the people who have everything. Talk about great mind, the mind of invention, the mind of bringing up things in a magical way and in a way that many people would not be able to understand. Africans have great minds. Africans have everything. There is no gift that God has not blessed Africans with. And that is why people are using Africans mostly and so much to be able to build themselves, to be able to make themselves great. Back there, sometime back in China, they were asking that black people should go there and help them get pregnant. That black people should go to China and impregnate Chinese people, because I don't know, Chinese men and Chinese are few, or rather Chinese men, they are not able to, they cannot, They're not doing what's supposed to be done. And my question is, why wouldn't they have gone to America and to other countries, maybe to Russia, to England, to Belgium? Why would they just mention Africa? People really want to use Africans so much. Sometimes, and these people, it's not that they don't know that Africans are capable and they have potential. They know. And that is why they are afraid, very much afraid, when Africans unite. When you talk about the issues of Africans coming back to Africa from those countries, people start complaining. People start shaking. Like, for example, these people from the West, especially the leaders from the West, when we're talking about bringing back our brothers to Africa, they start shaking because they know it is very dangerous when an African person unites. Because they know we have great minds and we have everything within ourselves to make sure that can help us to build ourselves, that can make sure, that can help us to establish ourselves and become so strong. So all the times people are working for they are working on how they can be able to dismantle Africans, not to allow Africans come together, because they know how threat the unity of Africans can be. They know how threat the unity of Africans can bring to them. So they fear Africans uniting. They fear Africans coming together. And Ibrahim Traore is working so much on bringing Africans together. That is why he has kept on inviting Africans to Burkina Faso. He has kept on asking Africans to come back to Burkina Faso. Because we are being, like, you see, walk out there. You'll find even in hospitals in the United States of America, black people, black doctors are there. They're the ones who are conducting surgeries and working there, building these countries. But in Africa, we are crying because we don't have enough doctors, because we don't have hospitals. Our hospitals are less of doctors. We have to import doctors to come and work in our hospitals. In Kenya, in Uganda, in Tanzania, in Zimbabwe, in Zambia, in Burkina Faso, in Egypt, all these countries. Yeah? But we are having Africans, our fellow Africans, who are working abroad. We want to unite. We want Africans to come back home. We want them to come back home. Because these people, at the end of the day, they are there working so much. But at the end of the day, they are treated anyhow. You're supposed to own a property. I don't know, you're not supposed to do what? Like some other rules that does not even make sense. And that is why we are fighting so much for the homecoming of Africans. We want them to come back to Africa. Africa is their land. Africa is their home. And I love what Ibrahim Traore is doing together with Dr. ARIKANA. Dr. ARIKANA and Ibrahim Traore, recently they've joined hands on fighting for the homecoming of Africans. They want Africans to come back to Africa. Because when they can be able to come back to Africa, Africa would be a great continent. Because these are people who will come back to Africa with great minds. When they come back to Africa with great minds, they will bring ideas. They're clever Africans in diaspora. I'm telling you, there is no African in diaspora who's not clever. Because in one way or the other, they went there through education, they went there for further education, and those who were born there, they went there in times of slavery, when they were being taken as slaves to these countries. They've been into the US. If it's about education, they've gotten the best education they can. And so there is no any single black American in America or in any other country of the West that is not clever, and those who do not have great minds. I tell you, if black Americans come back to Africa, if black Americans come back to Africa today, and they even take these leaderships that we are having, that we are seeing people playing around with, the so-called Mr. Ruto and the Tinubu and all these people who are like they're joking around with the leadership, Africa would go far. Because they've seen what a white man can do. And that is why you'd never see and you'd never find a black American supporting the West. It's not easy. It's very hard. It's very hard. So if they can come back to Africa and take positions even in leadership, we can be able to go far. Because they have ideas. They have minds, great minds. Okay? That is why Burkina Faso is fighting for Africans coming back to Africa. Me personally, I want Africans, black Americans, to come back to Africa. Because they are our brothers. They are our sisters. Me personally, I cannot withstand seeing them living the kind of life they are living sometimes, being oppressed and there is no justice. That's shit. I don't want that. I can't even accept that. It's very bad. And they will come back to Africa. Whether you try to close it, you Westerners, whether you try to do whatever you want to do, you just do whatever you want to do. But these are our brothers and our sisters, and we want them back to Africa through all means. They will come back to Africa very soon. The fight has just started. The struggle has just started. And at the end of this all, Africa will emerge the winner. Thank you so much for tuning into African Streamline. My brother from Diaspora, from Caribbean, and from Africa in particular, I salute you guys so much, and I love you so very much. I tell you, Africa is home. Anything that concerns Africa concerns me and you as Africans, and we must talk about it. Thank you so much for being here. Come again and again. Don't forget to subscribe. Until next time, I love you so much. Adios muchachos, guys.